Hey, fellow casuals, Ryan here, and we're adding a disclaimer to let you all know that this episode was recorded before our Arcane Season 2 coverage. So if you notice, some outdated references, don't worry. You're not hallucinating, and you are not trapped in a weird timeline situation like Zillion. Now, enjoy the episode, or else. Can you imagine just like the Dark Souls boss walking up to you and then his life bar shows up and it just says conservationist? And you're like, what the fuck?
Oh.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 161. I'm your host, Ryan, here with the other host, Edge.
What is going on, everybody? And hopefully we can actually hold true on, making our favorite promise, which is we got a short one for you today.
This is honestly probably one of the shortest stories, and I would hesitate to even call it that because it's more of a scene. Not even like a story best told in 3 parts. I don't even know if we can do that with what's given.
This is a story best told.
One thing that we can always guarantee, though, is housekeeping up top. You can listen to us everywhere. If you're listening to us here, you can listen to us somewhere else because we're there as well. Visit us at podcastcore.com. Remember, that's podcastcor.com for all of our info. Email us at the same name at gmail.com. Follow us on all the platforms because that helps us with discoverability. We appreciate it. But leave a like and comment wherever you listen. Word of mouth has gotten us this far, so tell a friend to side with nature by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
Yeah, and as far as siding with nature, we are excited to bring to you for the 3rd time Taric's bio. No, so for longtime listeners, you may remember an April Fool's episode of ours that was basically a blooper reel. And if you're not familiar with it, go check it out. I'm not even going to give you the episode number. Just go find it. It was fun. But today we are going to be going over a short collection of paragraphs that is the Uninvited Guest, which is following Taric and kind of what his day-to-day looks like now as the aspect of the Shield of Valoran, right? Like now that he is an aspect, is very much changed and very different from our other episodes where we kind of go back to the short stories of champions that we've already covered the bio. The bio episode for Taric is episode 18. If you go listen to it, that'd be awesome. We would love you for it. But in reality, I am going to have to give you some good details in this episode about his bio. Otherwise, this isn't going to make sense because it is so short and condensed that if you don't know those details, it's going to go in one ear, out the other.
Yeah, the story assumes that you know Taric or Taric. Have we ever decided? I think it's Taric.
I don't know if
he's from Demacia, so we'll say Taric.
Right, Taric. Yeah.
If it was Shurima, it would be Taric.
This is true. All right. So it's Taric. We have spoken. That is law now. All right. So this story very much assumes that you know all of Taric's details. And so we're just going to go ahead and give them to you up front.
Yeah.
If you do want to go listen to the bio, that'd be awesome. And I'm not going to go as deep as we do in the bio, so you will get more if you go listen to it. But
it's also written by someone who hasn't done much work. They worked on Taric's bio, and I think one other bio and a part of a story that we'll cover in the future is Bilgewater related. It's a big epic writing with a bunch of the writers who participated, but it's George Krstic. So maybe this is a stylistic thing where he's like, this is, I'm only doing a few of these.
Yeah. or maybe it's something that like that George Krstic did for fun, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't know all those details. I this is just a moment for me to be thankful to my co-host here because I couldn't even find the author. Like he had to go do all the research. So thank you. I appreciate it. You're
Yeah,
the
I just
best.
texted him and I was like, "Hey, George, did you write this?" And he was like, "You got me again."
On first name basis with him. Damn. All right. The next dinner social I want to invite. All right. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get like the bullet points for Taric out of the way. So Taric is a Demacian native. So he was born and raised in Demacia. He does come from a very well-known family, a noble family in Demacia. So for anyone out there who has listened to our recent Fiora story, you already know as far as like how important like the noble status is in Demacia. So for Taric being the eldest son, it was very important for him to go and serve out his martial duties to Demacia because it's the kind of nation that they are. And the only thing that really set Taric apart, other than just like his sheer martial prowess, he was a very gifted combatant,
Yep.
is that Taric spent a lot of time not doing military duties. And so Taric was very invested as far as like serving his community, trying to take care of like people that were in need, but he also has a very deep appreciation for nature and for art. So if Taric sees something that he thinks is beautiful, he wants to protect it. He wants that beauty to stay intact. And this was Taric's life, and it was pretty much all good, all kosher until he joined the Dauntless Vanguard.
Yep.
And as far as with the Dauntless Vanguard, we cover that a lot in our Garen episodes as well. Like that is the elite. He is now a Navy SEAL. All right. So for him to be in the Dauntless Vanguard, he can't go out and appreciate all of the beauty that he used to appreciate. He has more duties now, and he has to take them very seriously because of the Dauntless Vanguard take everything very seriously. And the only thing that really kind of keeps him in that position is his friendship to Garen. Because again, noble family, like Garen's a crown guard. Like, so it's like, yeah, no, hey, bro.
And Garen's very young at this point, too.
Yeah, well, they're both very young at this point.
Yeah,
Like,
but decision making wise in a leadership role and what he allows Taric to get away with plays into the youth here.
Yes. And which I won't get into like too many of the details there. Like that is something that you can go read his bio on. But for Taric, this comes to a head when he shirks those duties, and when he goes out and leaves his post, it ends up with some other soldiers getting killed. All right, which is essentially like the death penalty for that. But Garen goes out of his way to kind of stand up for Taric and invokes an old, essentially ancient law of exile. But with that law of exile, instead of it just being like you can't come back to Demacia, it is you can't be forgiven for your crimes until you climb Mount Targon. All right, and for many, that is exile because they're just like, all right, cool, I'm out. And they never come back to Demacia.
Yeah.
Taric is not that kind of person. And it's not so much that he has a familial duty for this. It's that he is the kind of person that really and truly feels remorse for his actions. So he chooses to go to Targon. He's going to climb that mountain. And it is upon climbing Mount Targon that he gets a visit. And for anyone who has listened to our episodes like with Kale or with Pantheon, the visit that you get climbing Mount Targon is not really just like, another climber. It's not just a nod and like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah,
like,
it's think about, obviously climbing Mount Everest is a feat that many undergo and some never return from. But imagine if you reach the peak of Mount Everest, and there were gods or things like gods up there that could influence your being, your mortality in a way. For their own purposes, that's what happened. He had a trip. He went up there. He had some mushrooms, and
Yep, like sometimes you just gotta drop a few mushrooms, wander into the forest, get lost, and meet Jesus.
yeah,
And that's what Taric did, which is really kind of fitting for like him as a character. But like he is visited by the aspect of the protector.
yep,
And this fits Taric because, you know, he loves the beauty in nature, he loves the beauty in people, and he loves the things that exist in Runeterra. And he wants to preserve those things. So he becomes the aspect of the protector and it's like gives it's weird, like I don't know if he receives or kind of just gives himself like the title of Shield of Valoran, but like so now he is like the protector of all of Valoran. He just wants to protect Runeterra, and that is who Taric is now. And that leads us to this story where we get to see what life for Taric is like now that he is the Shield of Valoran.
yeah. It's a very unique personality shift, and we see this with aspects in general, where an aspect can take over who a person is, and even though there's some remnant of who they were post aspect interaction, they do change. And Tarek is, kind of this free wielding, loving, I'm not going to say like hippie. It's not so much that. He's kind of like I guess laissez-faire is a term we've used recently.
Yeah.
But he's a capable person, but he kind of just likes to wander. He kind of doesn't really care too much about any specific thing. Even with Demacia, he never really intended to be a cog in the machine, right? But he also wasn't fighting against it. He was just like a middle ground kind of guy. Becoming the aspect, though, is like, oh, I'm protector of the world now. And that's something he takes very seriously to an extent that the average person who has a bias towards a nation or towards a state or towards another god wouldn't really connect with because he doesn't have a bias.
No,
He's protecting everyone.
it is very different than like with Kale becoming the aspect of justice, right? Because
Yeah.
then like Kale was like, okay, cool, I'm now just the face of Demacia.
Ironically, I don't even know if that's the correct term. A little spoiler for some future content. He reminds me of like a Shen, but not in Ionia. Like
yeah,
there's no spirit realm with him, but the way he approaches balance is very similar to Shen. There's a little taste, some foreshadowing, guys.
yeah. Look forward to that, and you'll never guess what episode we're going to be recording in the near future. But no, I definitely agree. Where it's like instead of it being a balance on a spiritual level, it's more of just a balance as far as within like the physical world itself,
Yeah.
right? And it's really cool though because it's like it having that personality shift is kind of like he was apathetic to a sense, right? And it just kind of gave the things that he already enjoyed a sense of passion.
Yeah.
Like so it just got rid of his apathy, but otherwise
Yeah.
he still stayed the same,
Perfect.
which is
Perfectly
really
said.
kind of interesting. And as far as like with the story that we get here, you need to have a drive. You can't be apathetic to do what Taric does now, because this story starts off with Taric beholding a very massive battle between Demacia and Noxus.
Which one? It could be any.
It could be any. Literally just, draw a line between Demacian border and Noxian border and just, throw a dart, and wherever that dart lands, that's where the battle's happening. All right. Like that's Demacia and Noxus are like always at full scale war
Oil and
with
water,
each other.
baby. Oil and water.
And as far as like with this first person account that we get from Taric here, is he's even saying that it's like they're just magnetically drawn to one another, and and they're fighting and dying, and for many of the people that are doing the fighting and dying, they don't even know why.
Yeah.
Like they're just there and they're just doing it. And I do like, as far as like with Taric, kind of going over like the ideals that are driving the two nations, and how it's like these two nation like their policies against each other is leading to this physical conflict. And like we're getting that, and then he's like, yeah, but I'm focused on a different and higher goal. But we don't know what that goal is right now. We don't know why he's at this battle right now, but we know that he's here to protect something.
It reminds me, so for we bring up Jujutsu Kaisen and other anime all the time, but it reminds me of JJK. If you've seen recent the recent season, no spoilers, but there's a moment where Gojo, and it's been memed about, you've probably seen it online, where Gojo goes into an absolute moment of bliss when he reaches a level of power that he knows no one can understand but him. And this first part of this story runs like that, where he's descending from the mountain into this battle. And as he's walking, he's looking down on them, even though ultimately he's protecting them, or he's going to protect them in a way they can't understand, because they focus their minds on such feeble things, when the real purpose is what's in my heart, because my heart is for all. It's like that kind of, and usually that's drug related.
Yeah. Again,
type of
again, drop a bunch of shrooms and get lost in the woods to find Jesus. Like that's Taric.
Yeah, but with Taric, it's actually backed by the power within him, right?
Yeah.
He
actually found Jesus.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot in Runeterra, where they take a lot of concepts that in the real world would seem ridiculous, not like magic and all that stuff, but the ideals of people would seem ridiculous if you didn't have gods running amok and celestials and creatures of the deep. This world does have that. So it's not so absurd for him to behave as such.
Yeah. And it's also not so absurd for like his goals to actually have like a bigger meaning and power, right? Like,
yeah.
There's which is why like we make that Shin comparison. He is arguably like protecting some balance. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But I do love that you make the comparison to Gojo, because like we
even his beauty.
Yeah, like one, his beauty, but then we even get like a bit of that attitude where, he is literally just kind of taking a stroll through a massive battlefield.
Yeah.
And then he's commenting to himself, my usual weapons, wit, charm, and warmth, are useless in this cauldron of desperation.
What a lie. Imagine going to like a kickback and you run into somebody, a friend of a friend in the circle, and you're just chatting, and he drops that line on you.
Yeah. And for a fact with Taric, while he is thinking that to himself in the middle of this battlefield, the moment he's listing off his weapons, quote unquote, he is doing a hair flip and full on Fabio Dazzler effect, right?
In my mind, I had him, so his hair blowing in the wind as he's saying this line out loud to no one. And because there's a battle going on, the wind is blowing, there's like flecks of blood passing by him but not touching him. That is the image in my mind.
There is, okay, I need an animated version of this now, because I know that there is one guy in the middle of this battle fighting for his life and getting distracted, like listening to Taric, and that's how he dies, right? Like he just turns his head like, what the hell did he say? Ah! But yeah,
but
so like, yes, we digress, because like Taric is just walking through. He is like, yeah, like none of this matters to me right now, though, because I'm here for one goal. And yeah, I'm going to read it directly. And there, dead center of the roiling fury of battle, the blaze of color calls to me. A delicate life about to be snuffed out amid the mud and gore-covered boots, standing bravely, unbowed by the thudding dullness of the armored brutes around it. Its beauty rings out like a single crystal bell. It is the last flower of its kind. If it dies, no more shall bloom. I cannot allow it to perish. And it is at this point that he's seen his target, which is literally a flower. and he's now so deep in the battlefield that he comes across the two commanders of these armies that are like clashing against each other, and they stop their clash to look at this Fabio looking motherfucker to be like, what the hell is that? And it is at this point that Taric leaps into action to like save this flower, to save the balance of nature in this area. And before he goes into action, the commanders like kind of look at each other and like, did you bring him? Okay, I guess we kill him. And then Taric's like, well, this is why I fight. And that's where the story ends. Is Taric doing his Fabio thing in the middle of a battlefield. And then it's like, well, I am here to protect and for the good of all of the Valoran and the good of Runeterra as a whole, I must kill you guys to save this flower.
Can you imagine just like the Dark Souls boss walking up to you and then his life bar shows up and it just says conservationist? And you're like, what the fuck?
Like this is officially like this is gotta be like the face of like tree huggers everywhere. All right, of just the Dark Souls boss of tree hugging.
Yeah, and dude, that's literally where it left off. Like, it's funny because half this episode has been us prepping you for the story, so we hope that helped.
Yeah.
As far as the discussion side, that we usually have fun. So if you've listened to the episode, that's it. Now we just kind of chat for a bit since we have some time here.
Yeah. And thank you for listening.
Yeah.
But if you want to hang out with us.
But the point I want to go back to is like Taric essentially being local government where Shen is federal when it comes to balance, right? And it's a cool concept because I like you have characters like Kale who also is tied to Demacia, and that's something we want to say that we've promised. Listen, we've promised a lot of things. Okay, we'll get there. There's plenty of time, but Demacia is so unique. There's so much going on, and with Kale, justice allegories are all over the place, right? But when it comes to writing good characters that are essentially neutral in a sense, that's where you can have some fun. Because like
Absolutely.
what drives him is something we still haven't questioned. Because most aspects, like the aspect of like we know what drives like the aspect of war, right? Or Pantheon's aspect. We know what drives them, and it's very understandable. But when you have an aspect that grants you powers and then you then only seek balance, what is the background on that? We don't have much information on it.
Yeah. And like as far as like with the lack of information there, right? Is that when we look at a character like Shin, who's very invested in balance, but like you said, at a federal level instead of the local level.
Yeah.
We know what the balance that Shin is working to maintain is.
Yes.
Like we're given what is there, which is the spirit realm. It gives you the visual of the yin and yang to work around. There is nothing like that as far as for what Taric's working for, because Taric is like, I must maintain the balance of Valoran. Okay. Demacia and Noxus are at a heated war right now that is throwing everything in flux. Not right now, my child. Look at that flower. And it was like, what do I do with that? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so it is really, it's refreshing though, especially for like a character that has such deep ties with Demacia, because we spoke kind of recently with our most recent Fiora story.
Yes.
As far as like the amount of things going on in Demacia as a whole. And like, we talked at length as far as our excitement to really dive into that, but there's a lot going on there. And so it's refreshing as far as seeing like a character with such deep ties to Demacia that doesn't care about the stuff going on to Demacia at all. Because like a character like the closest that we've gotten before is probably like characters like Vayne and Lucian, right?
Yep.
And they have things that they take very seriously, and and it shows in their stories, and their stories are very heavy. Taric takes his job very seriously, but it doesn't have a serious tone at all.
Yeah.
So it's very refreshing to have that, because otherwise, like, we're just having another story about, like, someone just bashing in the heads of some monsters. And you need these kinds of stories mixed in there that, is as a palate cleanser. Otherwise, like, it gets boring. This is one of the reasons why we can be excited about diving into Demacia more, because we have these palate cleansers thrown in, but it's a testament to all the different writers that Riot has been able to get to make these stories for League of Legends, that we can kind of talk about, like, the potential, like the possibilities of what Taric is, working to protect, because, like, he's still the aspect of the protector. He is a demigod, essentially. So there has to be something bigger, because he is bigger than life itself now. We just don't know what that something bigger is. And every piece of information we get is even more confusing, because it's like, what, a flower? Like, look at all these people dying around you. You're here for a flower? And he just hair flips and beats you with his hammer instead of answering your question.
There's a great expression here, though, in the sense that usually in the real world, it's so much of a struggle to get everyday people to understand that your neighbors are just like you. They have the same goals. They have the same things they aspire to that you do. They have families. They have things they care about. You're human. They're human, right? You're equals in all sense of the word. But as we know, society does its best to try to separate us in many different fashions. And that's why someone here, it's hard for them to understand and feel or care about someone on the other side of the world. Here, Taric's taking it to the next level to say, these are two nations that are constantly battling and there are lives on the line here. But the other life that's not being considered is the life of the last species of this flower that's desperately just trying to live. And what y'all don't understand is both of you are equal, but so is this flower. And that's kind of cool to me. That's very cool.
Yep. Like, again, like, this is like,
vegans are eating right now. Pun intended.
And like, this Taric should be the face of, like, conservationists now, because, like, it is such a enjoyable character because of, like, the goofy kind of feel to it, while also just kind of sending, like, a good message of just, like, regardless of how bad, like, the strife between these two nations are, like, there's still the world.
Yeah.
Like, it is smaller than the world. And without a world, without a planet, like, what are you gonna do? Like, you gotta have somewhere to live, right? So it's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Vegans are eating, and they're eating good for once.
Yeah. All right, we're leaving it there. We've had fun. No more eating puns. We're done here. Listen, this has been a fun one. We've definitely devoured everything on this bone, dude. This story.
Oh yeah, we left nothing here, which is impressive to say, because it's, like we said at the start, there wasn't a lot in this story, but like, Taric is, regardless of, like, how short of a story this is, Taric is a cool character. So it was a lot of fun to be able to talk about him again and not do his bio for the third time.
Yeah. We don't have much content for Taric, but when we talk about the wider range of Demacia, he will come up. So thanks for hanging out here. There won't be another Taric episode in the near future, but there will be more Demacia content. So thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.